Book of Heaven, Volume 15, Part 9. July 5th, 1923. Jesus is presented to Pilate by the Jews. Where the true kingdom is, and what it is. I was accompanying my suffering Jesus in the hours of his most bitter passion, especially when Jesus was presented to Pilate by the Jews, and was accused. And Pilate, not satisfied with the simple accusations they were making against him, returned to question him in order to find a sufficient reason, either to condemn him or to release him. And Jesus, beginning to speak in my interior, told me, "My daughter, everything in my life is profound mystery and sublime teachings, in which man must reflect himself in order to imitate me. You must know that the pride of the Jews was so great, especially in the false sanctity they professed, because of which they were held as upright and conscientious men, that they believed that by just presenting me themselves, and by saying that they had found me at fault and guilty to death, Pilate would have to believe them and condemn me without making them undergo any interrogation. More so since they were dealing with a Gentile judge, who had neither any knowledge of God nor a conscience. But God disposed things differently in order to confound them, and to teach superiors that as good and holy as the people who charge a poor accused one may appear, they should not believe them easily, but should almost overwhelm them with many interrogations, to see whether there is truth, or rather, under that clothing of goodness, there is some jealousy, rancor, or the intention to snatch some aspired position or dignity from their superiors by making their way into their hearts. Scrutiny makes one know people. It confounds them, and shows that one does not trust them. And in seeing themselves not appreciated, they dismiss their thought of aspiring to positions or of accusing others. How much harm superiors do when, keeping their eyes closed, trusting in false goodness and not in proven virtue, they assign a position or pay heed to someone who is accusing others of some fault. How humiliated the Jews were left in not being easily believed by Pilate, in going through many interrogations. And if he surrendered to condemning me, it was not because he believed them, but because he was forced to, and so as not to lose his position. This confounded them so much that their extreme confusion and profound humiliation remained impressed on their foreheads like a mark, more so since they noticed more rectitude and more conscience in a Gentile judge than in themselves. How necessary and just scrutiny is! It casts light and calm into the true good, and confusion into the evil. And when, wanting to scrutinize me also, Pilate asked me, "Are you a king? And where is your kingdom?" I wanted to give another sublime lesson by saying, I am king. And I wanted to say, but do you know what my kingdom is? My kingdom is my pains, my blood, my virtues. This is the true kingdom that I possess, not outside of me, but within me. What one possesses on the outside is not a true kingdom, nor a safe dominion, because that which is not inside of man can be taken away, usurped, and he shall be forced to leave it. But that which he has inside, no one shall be able to take away from him. Its dominion shall be eternal within him. The characteristics of my kingdom are my wounds, the thorns, the cross. In it, I do not act like the other kings who make their peoples live outside of them, unsafe, and eventually even starving. Not I. I call my peoples to dwell inside the rooms of my wounds, fortified and defended by my pains, their thirst quenched by my blood, their hunger satisfied by my flesh. This alone is true reigning. All other reigns are reigns of slavery, of dangers, and of death. While in my kingdom there is true life. How many sublime teachings, how many profound mysteries in my words. Each soul should say to herself, in pains and in sufferings, in humiliations and in abandonments by all, and in practicing true virtues, this is my kingdom that is not subject to perishing. No one can take it away from me or touch it. On the contrary, my kingdom is eternal and divine, similar to that of my sweet Jesus. My sufferings and pains certify it for me, and render the kingdom more fortified and fierce, in such a way that, in the face of my great strength, no one shall be able to wage battle against me. This is the kingdom of peace, to which all my children should aspire. July 11th, 1923. The greater the work God wants to do, the more necessary it is that the creature he chooses be unique and singular. The paternal goodness wants to open another era of grace. I was praying and abandoning all of myself in the arms of my most sweet Jesus, but with a thought in my mind that was saying, only for you this martyrdom of causing bother to others, of being a burden to your ministers, as I cannot do without letting them meddle in my business, the things that pass between me and Jesus. Others are free. They enter a state of suffering, and on their own they free themselves. Yet how many times I prayed him to free me, but in vain. Now, while I was thinking of this and other things, blessed Jesus came, all goodness and love, and placing himself near me, told me, my daughter, the greater the work I want to do, the more necessary it is that the creature I choose be unique and singular. The work of redemption was the greatest, and I chose only one creature, endowing her with all gifts, never conceded to anyone, so that this creature might contain so much grace as to be able to become my mother, and so that I might deposit in her all the goods of redemption. And in order to keep my own gifts safe, from the moment she was conceived until she conceived me, I kept her overshadowed within the light of the most holy Trinity, that became her custodian and held the office of directing her in everything. Then, when I was conceived in her virginal womb, I, being the true priest and the head and the first of all priests, I myself took on the charge of keeping her and directing her in everything, even in the motion of her heartbeat. And when I died, I entrusted her to another priest, who was St. John, a soul so privileged, who contained all graces, unique in the divine mind, unique in history. I did not want to leave her without the assistance of a representative of mine up to her last breath. Have I perhaps done this with other souls? No, because they did not contain so much good, so many gifts and graces, and therefore so much custody and assistance was not necessary. Now, my daughter, you too are unique in my mind, and shall also be unique in history. And there shall not be, either before or after you, another creature for whom I shall dispose, as though forced by necessity, the assistance of my ministers. Having chosen you, in order to deposit in you the sanctity, the goods, the effects, the attitude of my supreme will, it was appropriate, just, decorous, for the very sanctity that my will contains, that a minister of mine should assist you, and be the first depository of the goods that my will contains, so as to let them pass from his lap into the whole body of the Church. What great attention is required of you, and of them, of you in receiving from me, like a second mother to me, the great gift of my will, and in knowing all its qualities, of them by receiving them from you, so that the fiat voluntas tua, on earth as it is in heaven, may be fulfilled in my Church. Ah, you do not know how much I had to give you in order to dispose your capacity, so that I might deposit my will in you. I removed from you any seed of corruption. I purified your soul, your very nature, in such a way that neither do you feel anything for them, nor do they for you, because, since the seed is missing, it is as if fire were missing to firewood. And even though I did not exempt you from original sin, as I did with my dear mother, by removing from you the seed of corruption, I worked another prodigy of grace, never conceded to anyone else, because it was not decorous for my will, thrice holy, to descend into and take possession of a soul that would be shaded, even slightly, by the slightest corrupted breath. My will would not have adapted itself to taking possession of her, to communicating its attitude to her, had it seen any seed of corruption in her, just as I, Word of the Father, would not have adapted myself to being conceived in the womb of the celestial Mamma, had I not exempted her from original sin. And then, how many graces have I not given you? You think it is nothing, and therefore you give it no thought. And instead of thanking me, you occupy yourself with thinking about what I have disposed for you, and for those whom I have placed around you, while I want you to only follow my will. You must know that this fulfillment of my will is so great as to be numbered among the greatest works that the divinity has operated, and I want it to be known, so that in knowing its greatness and the immense goods it contains, they may love it, esteem it, and desire it. 3 times did the Supreme Divinity decide to operate ad extra. The first was in creation, and it was without the intervention of the creature, since none of them had yet come out to the light of the day. The second was in redemption, and with it intervened a woman, the holiest, the most beautiful, my celestial Mamma. She was the channel and the instrument I used in order to fulfill the work of redemption. The third is the fulfillment of my will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. That is, for the creature to live and operate with the sanctity and the power of our will. A work inseparable from creation and redemption, just as the sacrosanct Trinity is inseparable. Nor can we say that the work of creation has been completed by us, if our will, as it was decreed by us, does not act in the creature, and live with that freedom, sanctity, and power with which it operates and lives in us. Even more, this is the most beautiful point, the highest, the brightest, and the seal of the fulfillment of the work of creation and redemption. These are divine decrees, and they must have full completion. And in order to fulfill this decree, we want to make use of another woman, and that is you. The woman was the incitement, the cause for which man fell into his misfortunes, and we want to make use of the woman to put things in order, to let man out of his misfortunes, and give back to him decorum, honor, our true likeness, just as he was created by us. Therefore, be attentive, and do not take things lightly. This is not about just anything. This is about divine decrees, and about giving us the field to let us accomplish the work of creation and redemption. Therefore, just as we entrusted our Mamma to St. John, that she might deposit in him, and from him into the Church, the treasures, the graces, and all of my teachings that I had deposited in her during the course of my life, when she was entrusted to me and I acted as priest to her, as I deposited in her, as in a sanctuary, all the laws, the precepts, and the doctrines that the church was to possess. And she, faithful as she was, and jealous of even one word of mine, deposited them in my faithful disciple John, so that they might not be lost. And therefore my mamma has primacy over the whole church. So I have done with you. Since the Fiat Voluntas Tua must serve the whole church, I entrusted you to a minister of mine, that you may deposit in him everything I manifest to you about my will, the goods contained in it, how the creature must enter into it, and how the paternal goodness wants to open another era of grace, placing his goods that he possesses in heaven in common with the creature, and giving back to her the lost happiness. Therefore be attentive, and be faithful to me. July 14th, 1923. Expectation of a new era. The surest sign that it is near. As I was in my usual state, my good Jesus came, but all afflicted. It seemed to me that he could not detach from me, and all goodness he told me. My daughter, I have come to make you suffer. Don't you remember when I wanted to chastise man, and you did not want me to, wanting to suffer yourself in their place? And I, in order to make you content, told you that instead of doing 10, for love of you I would do 5. The footnote reads this is a reference to April 16th, 1904, Volume 6, as well as October 29th, 1907, Volume 8. Now, the nations want to fight against one another, and those that believe themselves to be the most powerful are taking up arms to their teeth in order to destroy the weak nations. This is about total destruction, my daughter. This is why I have come to make you suffer, to give you that 5 that I promised you. My justice shall give to fire and water the power of the office that they contain, in order to destroy peoples and entire cities. Therefore, a little bit of your suffering is necessary in order to reduce these chastisements by half. Now, while he was saying this, he moved in my interior, as though holding many instruments in his hands. And as he moved them, pains and sufferings were formed, with such stretching of all my members that I don't know how I remained alive. And when he would see me moaning and shivering because of the intensity of the pains, with an air of one who has triumphed over everything, Jesus would say to me, "You are life of mine, and with my life I can do whatever I want." And he would continue his crafting of making me suffer. May everything be for the glory of God, for the good of my soul and for the salvation of all. Then afterwards he added, My daughter, the whole world is upside down, and everyone is waiting for changes, for peace, for new things. They themselves gather to discuss about it, and are surprised that they are unable to conclude anything and come to serious decisions. So true peace does not arise, and everything resolves into words, but no facts. And they hope that more conferences may serve to make serious decisions. But they wait in vain. In the meantime, in this waiting, they are all in fear, and some are preparing for new wars. Some hope for new conquests. But with this, the peoples are impoverished, are stripped alive. And while they are waiting, tired of the sad present era, turbid and bloody, which enwraps them, they wait and hope for a new era of peace and of light. The world is exactly at the same point as when I was about to come upon earth. All were awaiting a great event, a new era, has indeed occurred. The same now. Since the great event, the new era in which the will of God be done on earth as it is in heaven, is coming. Everyone is awaiting this new era, tired of the present one, without knowing what this new thing, this change, is about, just as they did not know it when I came upon earth. This expectation is a sure sign that the hour is near. But the surest sign is that I am manifesting what I want to do, and that turning to one soul, just as I turned to my mamma in descending from heaven to earth, I communicate to her my will and the goods and effects it contains, to make of them a gift for the whole of humanity. You have reached the end of Volume 15. Fiat.